Pampa, Texas. New Year's Eve, 1993. Festivities and fireworks end in tragedy. A triple homicide. 40-year-old Twilight Busby is found strangled and beaten with an axe handle in her own living room. Her 20-year-old son, Randy, is murdered in his bed. Her other son, 22-year-old Scooter, dies on the neighbor's porch. The sole survivor becomes the prime suspect. Twyla's 31-year-old boyfriend, Henry Hank Skinner. He says he slept through the whole thing. Is that even possible? Police don't think so, and neither does the jury. Hank is found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to death. He's been on death row for 19 years now, still pleading innocence. Hank even has supporters around the world rallying for his release. I've come to the Polunsky unit in Livingston, Texas to find out why. I'm Candace Dong. As an FBI agent, I worked on the front line for the world's most powerful law enforcement agency. I went undercover, I trailed terrorists, and I interviewed notorious killers. It's my job to understand the people who others cannot comprehend.
Hank, the name of this show is Facing Evil, and you've done that in your life.
Yeah.
What evil have you faced?
Yeah, we ain't got that much time. The night of these murders, I have to say that is the worst night of my life. I woke up and everybody in the house was dead or dying.
So before we talk about that night, let's go back. Tell me about you. What was your childhood like?
Great. I had the best parents in the world. I mean, my childhood was idyllic. We lived on a dead-end street. We were surrounded by miles and miles of woods. And so as a child, I played in those woods, you know what I'm saying? I mean, and all the kids that were on the street, it was a whole bunch of families that bought houses on that street in that same year. And then we were all the same age, and so we grew up kind of like the Little Rascals.
What was high school like for you?
When I wanted to get grades, I was a straight-A student. But in the later years of high school, the material became too boring to me, and so I'd skip school and I'd fail classes because I wasn't in school and stuff like that.
Hank does finish high school later, but he moves from little rascal to teen rebel. He starts making a name for himself with the local PD.
My mama used to say it like this: trouble follows me.
What trouble?
All kinds of things happen. I was one of these guys that anytime I get in a small town, for some reason or other, I stick out like a sore thumb, and some cop is going to get me. You know what I'm saying? I always, and I'm not intimidated by the police, you know what I'm saying? Because I know the law, I know my rights, and so, you know.
In fact, Hank considers himself somewhat of a legal expert. He tells me he worked with a criminal defense attorney and often challenged police on behalf of others.
They would lock up my friends and put them in jail or something, and I'd go down there and have the talk with the sheriff and tell him, hey, you know, we got this, we got that, you know, won't you let my buddy go, right? And they got tired of that. They didn't like being manipulated by some person like me, you know what I'm saying? And so they were always out to get Skinner, to get something they could use on Skinner because they wanted to neutralize me, you know? If anybody would call the police and mention Hank Skinner, they'd say, come here and sign a complaint, we'll arrest him, you know?
Hank says his crusades against the police make him a marked man. This may well be true, or could it be that Hank has delusions of grandeur? I think he sees himself as a modern-day Robin Hood.
I grew up with a romantic idea of being an outlaw. My problem was never being violent or I've never robbed people or done things with guns or stole from people or stuff like that, but I was involved with vices. You know, I like to drink.
Such as?
Drinking, gambling, recreational drug use, sex, drugs, rock and roll. You know, I was a child of the 60s and 70s, you know.
Hank says he has no violent streak, despite one previous charge for minor assault. But he does admit that his drinking gets so bad, he starts going to AA meetings. And it's here he meets Twilight Busby.
I had no intention of anything happening with her, but there was these two guys there, and they were kind of smart alecks. She was trying to tell her story, and they were kind of ganging up on her, and they got her crying. And it's one thing I can't stand is to see a woman cry, you know. And so I asked her, I said, do you want me to take you home? And she said, yeah. We sat down and started talking, and she told me what was going on in her life. And I don't know how to explain it, but once we locked eyes and we started talking, we were never separated from that moment until she died. People used to tease us about how sick we were in love, you know what I'm saying? And we were, it's true. We were like high school kids. Wherever we went, she sat in my lap. If she'd get away from me, it was like a physical disconnect. I could feel something missing, you know what I'm saying? That's how we were.
But this Robin Hood didn't save his maid Marion. "52-year-old Hank Skinner is on death row for the 1993 murders of his girlfriend, Twilight Busby, and her 2 adult sons. But he says he didn't do it. He had no reason to.
I just wish I could explain to you in a few words how our relationship was, but we were so on with each other. We didn't have to talk. We could just look at each other and know what was up, you know what I'm saying?
And she had 2 grown children.
Yes.
How did you get along with them?
Great, absolutely great. I took up a lot of time with them, you know, and I didn't try to be a father figure to them, you know. I tried to be a mentor and a friend to them, and I was great at it. And the 3 of us together, we really got along well. I took them fishing, you know, all kind of stuff that I like to do, they like to do too, but they'd never had anybody take up any time with them, you know.
Again, Hank portrays himself as a protector. He says he and Twyla often threw open their doors and fed the neighborhood. And that's what they were doing on New Year's Eve, 1993, the day of the murders.
In the afternoon, we had several of our friends in and out of the house. We were partying and drinking, just having a good time, friends in and out. I had smoked brisket on the table, ham hocks.
Partying, drinking. Twyla was drinking. You were drinking. People coming and going, enjoying the day, eating your smoked brisket.
Yeah.
Hank admits he and Twyla were hitting the bottle. But alcohol is not the only high Twyla was looking for. According to Hank, she is spiking her own drinks with codeine.
A lot of people do this. They like to mix codeine with alcohol because it's a better buzz. She had put 13 of them in her drink.
That's a lot of codeine.
Yes, it is.
So this was normal for her?
All of my friends did it.
Twyla's codeine-laced drink becomes crucial to Hank's defense because he claims to be allergic to codeine. And when he mistakes Twyla's drink for his body reacts badly.
It leaves me real lethargic. I feel like I'm moving through glue. I ain't got no energy. I can't do nothing. I can't think. My mind's all fuddled up. It's a bad scene. I get sick and puke, you know. And after I puke, that's when I start feeling better, but it takes about 2 days.
In an allergic reaction, the body shuts down and the person stops breathing. Hank's problem sounds like a routine side effect of codeine and alcohol. However, at 10:30, when Hank and Twyla are due to party on at their friend Howard's place, Hank isn't going anywhere.
Howard grabbed me by the arm and he tried to jerk me and tell me, come on, Hank, wake up and let's go. And he said he was shouting in my face. He jerked on my arm until he pulled my entire torso up off the couch. He said I never batted an eye, I never looked at him, I never acknowledged him, I was out of it, right?
Okay, at 10:30.
At 10:30.
Twyla and Howard go off to the party without Hank. But before they can ring in the new year, Howard drops Twyla back home.
I think Howard said 11:15 or 11:30. Yeah, he said she only stayed over at his house about an hour.
Okay. Do you remember her getting home?
No, I was passed out when she got home.
By morning, 3 people are dead. And Hank Skinner is covered in blood. In the last hour of 1993, Hank Skinner says he awoke to a New Year's nightmare.
It looked like someone had took a paintbrush and dipped it in a bucket of blood and slung it all over the walls. There was blood everywhere.
In the living room?
Yes.
And where was Twyla?
On the other side of the coffee table, laying on the floor dead, in a pool of blood. She was twisted. Her face was pointing one way, and her body was twisted the other way.
His partner has been strangled so violently, bones in her neck are broken, and her skull has been crushed by an axe handle. Her 2 sons have been fatally stabbed. According to the prosecution, it's all Hank's work. They say he was angry Twyla went to the party without him and attacked her. When her son Scooter happens upon the scene, Hank stabs him with a kitchen knife. Then murders the only other potential witness, Randy, in his bed, where Hank cuts his hand on the murder weapon. But Hank and his defense team say he couldn't have done it. He was in an alcohol and codeine stupor. Instead, they point the finger at someone else. Someone Twyla knew, who made advances to her at the party.
He began making come-ons to her, pinching her. This didn't come from me. This comes from the witnesses at the party. Mm-hmm. He was pinching her on the butt and pinching her on the breast and making crude sexual remarks to her and this, that, and another thing. And so she got upset and told Howard to take her home. So Howard brought her home. 5 minutes after they left, and to this day, no one has ever accounted for his whereabouts between the hours of 11:30 and 5 a.m. the next morning.
People testified that she left early because he was bothering her, yes. And 5 minutes after she left,
he left.
Even if this is true, we cannot name this person for legal reasons. He was never considered a suspect and now is deceased. But Hank insists after Twyla rebuffed him, this person followed Twyla home and murdered her. Hank slept through the whole thing until Scooter woke him up.
When Scooter got me off the couch to try to help me get dressed, when I stood up, I couldn't stand up because I didn't vertigo. And so I threw my hands out, I fell forward onto the floor. I believe that I landed on a shard of glass. Whoever killed Twyla with the upswing of the club had broke the ceiling fan light globe. So there was curved shards of glass all over the floor. Cut my hand from here all the way to here, severed 2 arteries, and so it bled profusely.
What was Scooter saying to you?
We gotta go. They're coming back.
They?
They are coming back.
He said, they are coming back.
They're coming back, yes.
Who was he referring to?
I don't know. I didn't ask him all that. You know, this was like a hurried thing. He wanted to get me out of that house, you know, so.
And how did Scooter look?
He was mortally wounded at that time. He was stabbed through the left forearm, under his arm right here, in the ribs, and once in the belly. Them 2 wounds weren't fatal. This wound was the one that was fatal. His lung filled full of blood. We went into the bedroom to see about his brother, and I remember him pulling the blanket back and looking at his brother.
And what was his state?
He was dead. He'd been stabbed 3 times in the back.
Hank says he and Scooter staggered down the street to get help. Scooter makes it to a neighbor's porch where he dies shortly after. But Hank keeps going in a different direction.
Whose house did you go to?
My ex-girlfriend.
Your ex-girlfriend. Why did you do that?
because, well, I wasn't going to her house. I was wanting to go to Howard's house.
You ended up at her house?
Yes,
okay.
I wanted to go to Howard's house. He lived one more block down the street, but I couldn't walk. I couldn't, you know, I just couldn't make it. And so I fell in her yard.
What did you tell your ex-girlfriend?
I don't remember what I told her. She says that I told her that I had been hurt and that I needed help. And she picked me up and carried me in the house. And she cleaned me up, and then I kind of passed out again, semi-comatose, laying across the table while she worked on my hand for a couple hours.
Why didn't she call the police?
She said that I threatened her, but that's not true. Our kind of people, we don't call the police.
3 people are dead. Hank is injured, and no one calls the police?
But you were cut very seriously.
Oh, sure. But I mean, you got to understand something. This is West Texas, and rednecks and roughnecks twist off all the time and get into knife fights. I mean, that's a typical Saturday night. So,
okay.
You know, not for me, but for some people.
The story gets even murkier here because at trial, Hank's ex-girlfriend said he confessed to attacking Twyla. Her testimony helps put Hank on death row. Then, in 1997, she recants, saying Hank's confession was simply the raving of a delirious drunk. She admitted lying so she would not be charged as an accomplice. But the biggest twist is yet to come. In the early hours of New Year's Day, 1994, Hank Skinner is arrested for the murder of his girlfriend Twyla and her 2 sons. He maintains he was passed out drunk on her couch and could not have strangled, bludgeoned, and stabbed 3 people to death. But a jury says he did. He's been sentenced to death.
When the judge said it, you know, he pronounced this sentence and he says, you know, you will be taken to a place to be determined by the director and injected with chemical or chemicals until you, the said Henry Watkins Skinner, are dead, dead, dead. And every time he said that dead, it was like a cold wash over me. I staggered backwards a little bit because of the way, you know, it was shocking as hell, you know, to hear somebody tell you that.
Hank?
Yeah.
Did you kill Twyla?
No, I did not. No, I did not.
Did you kill her sons?
I didn't kill anybody. I have never killed anybody.
Who do you think did?
His jacket was found right beside her body.
The jacket Hank refers to has gone missing from state custody. He maintains the real killer is someone in Twyla's circle. Someone we can't name because he was never a suspect.
Why didn't the police look at him?
Just what I told you, because my relationship with them was not good and they didn't like me anyway, and so this was their grand chance and they took it.
You're saying to me that you are in prison on death row because the police saw an opportunity to jam you up.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Is this just Hank's paranoia, or does the physical evidence back up his story? In a recent federal civil suit against the prosecutor, Hank won the right to have further DNA tests completed. An expert determined hairs found in Twyla's hand were not hers, not Hank's, and not her son's. Also, tests show Hank's blood alcohol content was 0.33, more than 4 times the legal limit. And his codeine level was 1.35 milligrams per liter, a potentially fatal dose. Furthermore, none of the victim's blood was mixed in with Hank's bloody handprints found at the scene. But a judge determined these results would not have changed the original outcome of the trial. Hank remains on death row.
I don't have any history of hurting anybody. I've never assaulted or hurt anybody. Yeah, I'm not no bad, violent person.
Is there anything, looking back, that you regret?
If I had been awake and been sober, I might have been able to stop this, or I might have got killed too. But after what I've been through since then, if I knew I was gonna die, I would have went for it. You know what I'm saying? I feel responsible because I was the man in that house and I failed to save them, and that's something I have to live with every day.
For a self-proclaimed protector, this must be hard to live with.
You've been on death row a long time. You've actually been taken to the death chamber. You were 20 minutes from execution.
23 minutes, yes.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years, realistically?
Well, I can shorten it down to that. I think sometime this year I'll be out or dead.
Hank Skinner provides convincing answers for some of my questions, but has selective memory for others. Hank has all the charm and grandiosity of a classic psychopath. But does that make him a killer? Some say the evidence arguably points to another suspect, and the answer may rest with the missing jacket. I can only hope that justice prevails.